Hi guys, I wanted to talk about Let's Scare Jessica to Death once again. It is one of my favorite horror movies and I love to watch it at least once a year if possible, and I rewatched it just a little while ago. I know I had mentioned that I would like to make more videos on Let's Scare Jessica to Death, so here we go. I still love the ambiance of this movie, and I think a lot of it has to do with the music. I've said before, I love minor key music. I love the creepy, weird synthesizer type sounds that come from this movie. There's something very low-key in this movie that shows up a lot, and it's wind noise. So there are scenes indoors where you hear the wind blowing, and it's not overwhelming, but it makes you feel out of place, a little isolated, and it gives a spooky atmosphere to the whole thing, like a spooky filter almost. And that will come up throughout the entire movie. There's no wind, but you hear wind, and I love that effect. I'm positive that has to be intentional, but I don't know that it's even very obvious if you just watch the movie. If you're not listening for it, I don't know that it stands out. It's more of a feeling, and when you stop and think about it, you're like, oh yeah, why is it windy? It shouldn't be windy. We're in an attic, the windows aren't open. So I love that Jessica has so much inner turmoil. She is constantly worrying about the fact that she is viewed as fragile by the others, and she does not want to alarm them, but she also doesn't know how to talk to them without alarming them. So she keeps telling herself, I'm okay, things are fine, but then something will happen and she'll steel herself up in her mind and say, stop, don't say anything, no one will believe you. And she often has to adjust quickly. So she will be upset or scared by something, and then she immediately has to turn it around and pretend like everything is okay.
Get it open? You okay?
Don't tell them. They won't believe you.
Yes. Well, let's go in.
So she flips the switch often, and her internal monologue keeps telling her, don't do this, they'll misinterpret you. Don't go here because they'll think it's a bad idea. Don't do, just it keeps checking her. And I think it's making everything worse for her, keeping it bottled inside, because Abigail Emily, she is some sort of emotional vampire. And I think she senses in Jessica, which I don't know if she could sense it or if she put out little telepathic feelers toward Jessica and she realized that Jessica has these thoughts that are susceptible and that she's a good victim because she doesn't want to draw attention to herself. She doesn't want to let Duncan and Woody in on the crazy things that she is hearing or seeing, and therefore Emily can prey on her without Jessica telling on her, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of don't tell them, act normal, ignore it, whatever. And it's interesting to me that Emily's voice does appear in Jessica's mind before Jessica has met Emily. But afterward, after they've met, Jessica doesn't say, hey, why did I know your voice before you spoke? When Jessica gets to the house, Emily's voice says, Jessica, why did you come here? And then, of course, Jessica has another one of those moments where she's like, don't say anything. I see a girl in a rocking chair, but they're not going to believe me. Just don't say anything. And then when everyone gets inside and they find Emily, who is squatting in the house, they see her run across the top of the stairs. Duncan says, oh, I saw it too. And Jessica feels relief. And she comes out of her shell because she was tamping this all down, worried about what she was imagining, when in fact she wasn't imagining anything at all.
What's wrong? It's okay, Jess. I saw it too. What's the matter? What? Someone's upstairs.
And once she has confirmation that the thing that she saw was actually real, she's much more bubbly, effervescent again, and she says to Woody, I really did see something. And he says, I believe you. And he says it so naturally and so easily that we are kind of led to believe that Jessica's being too careful. You know, Woody seems very, very... He doesn't seem to be treating Jessica with kid gloves. He seems to believe her, and, you know, it's not a big deal. Jessica's making it a big deal because it is to her. I mean, she doesn't want to go back to the hospital. And then we get to the part where they have the seance, and they're calling on all the spirits of the people who've died in the Bishop house. And Emily is fucking with Jessica. She is either adding to the cacophony of voices, or she's just observing Jessica hear the voices. And I know that Emily knows what's going on. And all these voices are something that Jessica can hear, and she's a little disturbed by it. No one else seems to be affected, but Emily is just zeroing in, and it's very predatory, and we can see that she's already starting to cull Jessica from the others. Emily seems to want Jessica, and she is going to work on the two men, Duncan and Woody, in order to get to Jessica, because Jessica does seem to be some sort of a prize. I love the plaintive piano music while Jessica's up in the attic and she's trying on the wedding dress that Abigail had, and she gently lifts the knife off of the dress. It was in the trunk on top of the dress, packed away, and she puts it up on the windowsill. Later on, we will see that that windowsill no longer has the knife, and it's because Emily has taken the knife and is using that as her instrument. So there must be some sort of history there. Why was it packed away in her trunk? Why is that the knife she uses to kill the mouse mole? If you don't know what the mouse mole is, check my other video. And why is she using that as her instrument to turn people? And that's another thing. It's not even clear if these people are vampires or zombies or minions, because no one seems to be feeding off of... Can you hear Cricket drinking? No one seems to be drinking blood. No one is turning into a pointy-toothed vampire without a reflection. These people are just crotchety old men, mostly, in the town, and they seem to not even do Emily/Abigail's bidding or anything like that. I don't exactly know what their role is. They are assholes, and they are grumpy old men, but that's pretty much the extent of it. So there does seem to be some sort of ritual with blood, because there is, and it's not even the same spot, but all these men bear wounds, so they've been bled from a certain area, and none of them are the same. Some of the cuts are on the neck, some are on the arms, some are on the side of the head, that kind of thing. It's not consistent, and the wounds are the consistency of a very healed injury that has kind of scarred over. So they're not fresh, they're not continually being bled. I'm not sure what all of that means. If anyone has any theories, let me know. What I should do sometime is watch, I think there's a full-length commentary on the Blu-ray. So maybe one day I will watch the commentary and just see what they say about all that. Emily continues to feed on Jessica's, her vulnerability, her worry that she's losing Duncan. And it's one of those tenuous situations where having Emily around gives Duncan something to leave Jessica for, and it brings Jessica to this point where she can't voice her concerns because Duncan might abandon ship. So she can't be clingy, but she can't push him away because both things will likely send him over to Emily, which is not what Jessica wants. And Emily knows it, and she plays on that. Even though Woody is the one who's really interested in her, she wants Duncan to cause the most amount of issue. Emily's saying, I'll never go away, you know, Duncan's mine now, and Jessica just kind of has to like sit there and take it. Now, the mute girl, she's very interesting. We didn't really talk about her much in the first video, but she appears a couple times. She appears in the opening scene with Jessica in the graveyard doing some grave rubbings, and Jessica thinks she's a figment of her imagination that time. She sees her again when the antique dealer is killed. The mute girl shows her the body. And then later, when Duncan is trying to talk to Jessica about the dead antique dealer, he chases the mute girl down because she appears. So we know that it's definitely a girl, because Duncan can also see her. And there's a confrontation, and the girl doesn't want to get involved in any of this, and Jessica's losing her patience. And all of a sudden, Emily comes up, and the way she's looking at this girl, you know she knows her. And the girl is scared of Emily. But she can't speak, so we don't exactly know what's going on between them.
Did you see anybody? Did you?
For God's sake, Jessica, leave her alone.
You still don't believe me? You don't believe there's anything strange going on?
I think it's all strange.
You think I'm crazy? Admit it. Admit it. Who's that?
She's pretending she doesn't know her. Obviously she does. And then we see something in her eyes where she is kind of thinking, I'm going to deal with you. You know, you're causing problems and you will be dealt with. So I like that. And then, of course, later the mute girl ends up dead inside the base case, inside the house, the Bishop house. And Jessica sees her. So a little more fleshing out of her story would have been very interesting to me too. When Duncan does finally broach the subject of Jessica going back to the doctor in the city, Jessica starts shouting, you know, why don't you leave me? This is, you know, she's feeling very abandoned and emotional, and she's raising her voice, and Duncan's like, quiet, they'll hear you. And she's like, who cares? You know, at this point, who does care? That she's trying to stay with her husband. She doesn't want to go to the hospital. She doesn't want to leave him alone with this now kind of a rival for his affection. She doesn't want to be broken. She doesn't want to have to talk to the doctor. And she doesn't want to regress. And then they kind of have this moment where Jessica tries to reach out and touch his back, and she can't bring herself to connect. And he doesn't comfort her, and they sleep apart, and that's when Emily seduces Duncan. Then we have that scene that I love so much, and I've shown it in the other video, where Jessica's up in the attic, and the photo that they had sold to the antique dealer is back in the attic. How the fuck did it get back there? You know, after selling it, it somehow makes its way back up into the attic. That's creepy. And then of course we have that whole exchange where Emily is just her, oh my god, the glances that are going on in this scene are just mesmerizing. The way that Emily is looking at Jessica, who's looking at the photo, who's then saying, you know, this photo, I think that's you in here.
I'm still alive.
Abigail, never got to wear that wedding dress. Drowned in the cove.
I'm here. I'm here.
And Jessica's like, oh, you know, this photo is you, and I don't like it, and makes me uncomfortable. And Emily's like, oh, it could be anyone. It's an old print, you know. And it's such a chilling scene, and then it becomes menacing because Emily crowds Jessica. She just keeps getting closer to her, and I mean, Jessica's obviously upset that this creepy old photo has a person in it who looks like Emily. Emily's kind of a weird person to begin with, and that photo shouldn't even be in the house anymore. So Jessica has all these like emotions, and then Emily is crowding her. She's staring at Jessica, she's invading her personal space, she keeps touching her face, which kind of almost mesmerizes Jessica. The touch, the comfort that Emily is giving her, she likes it in a way because she isn't getting that from Duncan. She's not getting that human interaction, and she also recoils from it at the same time because it's creepy and invasive, and it's from Emily. That's not what she wants. Plus, I think Emily is using some kind of vampiric type sedation on Jessica. She's kind of hypnotizing her. And of course the cove scenes. I love the cove scenes.
Come to me. This way, Jessica. This way. This way. Come. Here, Jessica. Here. Follow me. Follow me. Here, Jessica. Here.
Bodies coming up out of the water. Perfect. And, you know, you get that whole... The attic scene kind of extends into the cove scene with Emily being all over Jessica. She's apologizing, but at the same time she's still crowding her and still getting in her business, and she won't relent. And when Jessica finally is like, I'm leaving, you know, leave me alone, I'm getting out of here. And Emily's gone. Like, she's nowhere. And that white arm, that marble white arm that comes up out of the lake and grabs at Jessica, trying to drown her, you know, saying, follow me, stay with me, you're home now, all this stuff. Emily wants Jessica. She does. And she is so unrelenting and creepy about it. And it's just such a beautiful scene. And Jessica is fighting. She doesn't want anything to do with this. She's running away. She's horrified, but yet she's still kind of enthralled at the same time.
Stay. Stay. Stay, Jessica. Stay. You're home now.
Some of those moments are just the best moments in the movie. We have so much of Jessica, and it could be Jessica imitating Emily in her mind, saying, you know, what do you have to live for anymore? You want to be here, stay, you're home now, you want to die. Just all this stuff that could be Jessica thinking in terms of Emily, using Emily as a device to send her these thoughts, but I always believed that it was definitely Emily. And mostly I draw that conclusion from the fact that Jessica heard Emily's voice before she even met Emily. So it's not as though she heard Emily, started adapting her as a character to give her ideas in her own head. I think Emily and her power come through and actually have some sort of telepathy, and Jessica is receptive to it. She doesn't necessarily want to be, but she is able to receive these signals. Duncan's there, Emily's there, Jessica's in the middle of them. She doesn't know what to do, what's real, the townspeople are there. It's all very Rosemary Baby-esque, and it's not exactly clear what's happening. And when Jessica just can't take it anymore and she runs out of the house, tries to leave on the ferry, she sees that the ferry operator has one of those scarred over wounds on his neck, or his face, I think it's his face, his cheek, and says the ferry doesn't run for you. She goes for a rowboat, she rows out, and then the whole confrontation at the end with Duncan, you know, it's all so interesting because is this really happening? If it really truly was Duncan who has gone out in the water and doesn't announce himself, how does he appear out of the lake, and why wouldn't he say something or try to swim away when Jessica is killing him? You know, and then Jessica just drifts. She drifts in the rowboat, she curls up, she folds over and sinks into the bottom of the boat, and we can't see her anymore. She's doing all this as the credits roll, and she just makes herself small, and that's it. And with Emily giving up on her, I don't know if it's more of a, well, too late, now she's one of us, because she did get cut. I don't know what the process is of turning someone into this zombie vampire type thing, you know, but Jessica did get sliced with the knife, so I don't know. All very interesting, and I think I will check out the commentary and then I will come back and make yet another video. So let me know down below any thoughts on these videos. Do you have anything you want to add? Have you watched these before? Haven't watched them before? I have another video if you want to watch it about more of a general discussion concerning the movie itself, not just, I think we focused a lot on Jessica in this one. But yep, that is all for today. Have a spooky day. The fuck is liar? I wrote liar. A little more context, maybe?